Greetings. The purpose of this video is for the Mac platform to go through the steps of taking the GitHub repository CS181-S21 that's sitting kind of in the cloud on GitHub and making a copy locally on my computer. All of our work is on our computer, and we can think of GitHub as a cloud kind of service. It provides for version and software control, but essentially it gives us a set of files that are gathered together into a repository and allows us to, in a controlled way, get a copy of those files on our local computer. Okay, so all of our work is going to happen locally, but we will pretty much on a daily basis through the semester get the incremental version of what I am providing to you and putting it on your computer. Okay? But before we can do that, we've got to get it set up on your computer to begin with, and that's the purpose of this video. Right? So what we're going to do is we're going to, on the terminal, we're going, if you went through the steps of the Mac install, you should be able to bring up a terminal window. And we know now that that means that this terminal window is kind of logically at my home directory and that I'm user TC Brissou. And if I type in ls, I can see the set of folders and files that are in my home directory. For the purpose of illustration, for each of the steps that we're going to take, we're also going to bring up a Finder window and look at the exact same information by using the graphical user interface. Okay. For the purpose of this particular example, we are going to put our repository. We've got to choose where to put our repository on our local computer, and we're going to put it under desktop. You could make a different choice, and that's perfectly fine. If you've got a good organization for your class files for the various classes that you've taken, and you want to put this somewhere else, perfectly fine. I just want to have kind of a standard so that anybody that doesn't have an organization at least will have this organization to fall back on. Okay? So in the terminal window, we're going to say change directory to desktop. And on the Finder window side, we're going to go to our desktop. Now currently, we have nothing on the desktop. I've got one externally mounted flash drive, but no files on the desktop. Okay, so we want to take the version of the repository that's up at GitHub, and we want to clone that. That's a one-time operation that takes the version of things that, as they stand right this moment, on GitHub and brings them to our local system. Okay, so that's a clone operation. We've now seen two commands that I can issue at a command line prompt, ls to list a set of files, and cd to move from one directory to another within the file system. Notice how in our command line prompt, we've changed from tilde, which means my home directory, to desktop to say, I'm no longer in my home directory, I'm one directory lower in my desktop directory. All right, so this is the location where I want to create the repository. That involves typing in the following command. So follow along and do exactly this. So you should be in desktop. And we're going to do git is the command. Clone is kind of a subcommand within git. What is it that we want to do? We want to clone a repository, and then we name the repository. That's https://github.com. This is a URL. We start with HTTPS because we want a secure download. GitHub.com is where the repository, as far as a server is located. Denison-CS is the organization that holds the repository, and CS181-S21.git is the name of the repository. Just wrapped around, which is a little unfortunate. Let's expand that. All right, so that's the command we want to issue. Make sure that you take note of exactly what that command is, because yours should be identical. When you're in the right directory, we want to do a git clone. Right? When I hit return, it's going to clone into CS181 S21. Now, depending on what you've done previously, if you've already logged into GitHub, and if you have allowed the caching of your credentials, your username and password for logging into that site into your keychain on the Mac, then you're going to see something similar to what we just saw here for me. All right? If you do not allow password saving, then it might ask you for your GitHub username and your GitHub password. And then once you provide those, you should then get the same set of messages, cloning into CS181 S21, and then some progress information. If we take a look at what happened in the two ways that we can, in the terminal window, if I type ls, I can see that I now have a directory in here, where before ls showed me nothing. Right? And over here on my file explorer, I can see CS181 is now underneath desktop. If I click on CS181, then my graphical view shows me readme.md, which is actually the way that we set up the links for the installs, and folders for general, review, weekly. There will be a folder for homework, a folder for classes, and so forth. All right, so I have created that snapshot, that clone of the GitHub repository. All right, under general, I can see the syllabus, for instance. All right, and I can navigate around in the same way that you're used to relative to a file explorer. If I look under review, I can see a couple of things have been provided. In particular, I've got something called listinstruction1.ipynb and listinstruction2.ipynb. These are notebooks that are associated with our two list review videos. Back over here in the command line window, I need to kind of go into the directory in order to see the same set of things that I'm seeing in this panel right here. All right? So if I cd, that's change directory, and specify CS181-S21, I'm going to go into that directory. I can now see what directory am I in, CS181-S21. If I ls to list the things in that directory, I see the readme.md, the general, the review, and the weekly. All right. With all of that being said, now let's just do a real basic, let's use one of the files that are here. In particular, we're going to look at this listinstruction1.ipynb. Let's access it with our development environment. So this is just a sanity check to make sure that you're getting to everything in the right way. So we'll bring up Anaconda Navigator. Takes a couple of moments for that to load. And we're going to use the notebook way of getting to it, just so that I'm consistent with what I did on the Windows side. And we'll launch that. But you could also use Jupyter Lab, and everything that you can do in Notebook, you can do in Jupyter Lab. The Jupyter Lab gives us a little cleaner, a little more modern interface is all. Okay, so Jupyter Notebook, I bring that up. It actually brings up another terminal window in order to run our development environment. And in our development environment, we get a window in our browser. So we're going to be working within the browser in order to execute things. In particular, I can see from this home location in the browser, I can go to the desktop, and under the desktop, CS181 Spring 21, and under review, I can go to listinstruction1.ipynb. That brings up the notebook that's associated with the lists review video. And I can see that in a notebook, I've got things that are documentation, list review, construction lists. Those labels are documentation. And then I've got cells that have code in them. In this particular case, I've got code that's constructing a list. All right, I'm not going to walk through this. That's the purpose of the list review video, but it gives you an idea of bringing up an IPyNB that is in the repository that you just cloned. All right? After this is the one and only time that you're going to clone the repository. From then on, since you've got a version of it, you don't want to get a brand new version that would overwrite anything that you do, any modifications that you make, things that you add, which is how you're going to solve homework problems. So you don't want to overwrite it. Instead, you want the increment of anything new that I've put in the repository. You want to get that. Sorry for the pun. So I want to git pull to get the incremental pieces that are added to the repository, and that along with using notebooks will be the subject of a final video in this preliminary set. All right, thank you. That's it for this install video.